Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome Gaia to sit down and chat with us today. Gaia has been with the NuMundo community from the beginning, as I understand, and she is the co-founder of InanItah, which is a very special community in Ometepe, Nicaragua. She is also the creator of the Tantric Way, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Thank you so much for joining us, Gaia.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So can you tell us, what is the Tantric Way?
The Tantric Way is a personal development process that takes people through a 3-week intensive experience where they explore their relationship to themselves. They explore their relationship to their place of source. And the first week is called Self and Source, and it's about unwinding the past, really unwinding childhood traumas, taking the smoke off the mirror from the past so that people can be in the present. The second week focuses on relationships with others, predominantly love and sexuality relationships, and codependency issues, sexuality issues, life force issues, seeing what's holding you back so that you can step through it and so you can create better relationships with others. And the last week is about community and collective consciousness, and that's a lot about following Dharma, finding purpose. So really the whole intensive experience is designed to kind of resolve issues from the past, bring people into the present in an empowered way so that they can see what they're stepping forward into and so that they can manifest their highest self. Most of us are operating on some percentage of our true capacity because of the conditioning of our childhood, the self-limiting beliefs that we have. So Tantra in and of itself is often associated with sexuality. Tantra is actually a practice. If it were about anything sexual, it would be about our lovemaking with our higher self, this union of the small self and the big self. And sure, that's modeled in the way that we make love to others and relate to others. But ultimately, Tantra was designed to get us to live in this body, our highest God self. And so it's really about supporting people to find their power, find their dharma, find their gift, find their joy, find their purpose. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. And I've been wanting to get someone to sit down with me for a while and talk about the connection between personal development and especially working on our relationships and working on sort of those core issues like working with trauma, working with sexuality, and how that can reflect back outwards when we do that work.
Oh, that was one of the reasons actually that I got involved in this work in the first place. As you mentioned, I'm the founder of an ecological community. And to found a community where people are brought together to live close to nature is no small task. And here's, I had dreams similar to it, but it wasn't until I really started taking a look at myself, a look at what was in the way, that I was able to step into it. Oftentimes, our dreams are pointing us in a direction, but we sometimes miss the boat and think we have to focus on the goal rather than focusing on what's keeping us from the goal. Removing the obstacles, which is what we do when we do the therapeutic parts of the work, that removing of obstacles is so much more powerful than actually setting a goal and being really determined to it, because when there's a roadblock in the way, there's no getting past the roadblock until we face the roadblock. And when we do personal development work, we're actually clearing the road for ourselves so that we can create the beauty we've always wanted to create. So go ahead.
So working on ourselves really is working towards our goals.
Working on ourselves, working towards our goals. One of the pitfalls it's funny how like the spiritual paradigm and the spiritual story will tell us certain things, and then we can get kind of hung up on that, because what I've seen can sometimes happen is that people say, well, the only work I need to do is work on myself, and when I work on myself, everything will fall into place. That's kind of a sickness of our overindulgent, self-absorbed society. So this dance between moving in to look at what my stuff is going on, but if I get trapped inside all the time and I don't look towards present and future, if I'm always in the past trying to unwind my story, that can also be a pitfall or an obstacle.
Do you have any suggestions for people to find that balance?
Yeah, live. No, I think one of the things for me that tells me when I'm in balance is when synchronicity is happening in my life. That's the first sign that I'm in flow, that things are going well. And speaking again from my personal experience, if I feel like this kind of stress, or I can't, that's usually not about the external reality. That has a lot more usually to do with the internal reality. Or I have to achieve this thing because it's so important to me. And if I have to achieve this thing, I'm probably trying to achieve it to please someone else, to build up my ego, or something else. But if it's like, I'm just fucking inspired to do this, and if it falls apart, so what? And then the synchronicity is going to pull me over there somewhere, or the golden pot falls into the lap. Those are the things that's how I know I'm on. And when I'm off is anything less than that. And I'm off a lot. Most of us are off a lot.
Right.
I mean, that's the human experience, but it's noticing, wait, I'm not in synchronicity. What's in the way? So I guess it would be, the point being that to know when I'm in balance is to know when it's flowing. When it feels out of flow, it's a time to look back in the mirror and say, what's in the way of me jumping into the river?
And what are some of can you share one or two of the techniques that you use in the Tantric way to look in the mirror?
So one of the most powerful techniques that we explore, and each group is slightly different, so I don't want to make promises, but 90% of the time I would say we explore this looking at the inner critic voice, or the super ego voice. There's a voice inside of us that is usually made predominantly up of conditioning of our parents or of our teachers, authorities in general, and it's this voice that we have, you should be doing more, you're not good enough. Yeah. Identifying those voices and actually doing role play and psychodrama where that voice is repeated in front of you, and the invitation is to fucking get rid of it no matter what. So the person who plays that voice gets to decide when you got rid of them. And the point is, it doesn't matter if you laugh in the face of it. Sometimes you might have to be really angry at it to get it to go away. Sometimes you may have to tell it like, I don't hear you, or I hear you and I know you're there and I know you'll always be there, but I'm moving forward anyway. And the practice of actually somatically embodying this theater of getting rid of that voice that is in most of us predominantly, and identifying, what's your particular facet of that voice. But that's one of the more dynamic pieces that we might bring in there. And that way, when that voice comes in and you can recognize it, you can have that internal dialogue. Fuck you. You have the power over me.
Yeah, you get practice.
What?
You get practice. Shutting it down.
Exactly. I think that's one of the biggest things actually that the Tantric Way does, is that it allows people not only to see where the wounds are, to resolve some of the wounds, but one of the focuses is always then also, how do I step through them? Because there are scars. We walk around with scars, whether it's the scar on our leg, or whether it's the scar on our face when we're a little kid, or whether it's the emotional scar. There are certain scars that just don't go away, but how do we live with them and still step into our power, knowing that we're perfectly imperfect? And so I create experiences for people to actually try on their new self, rather than just think about the new self. It's like, how do we try it on? How do we step into the archetype of the new self? How does it feel? What happens to my chest when I tell that voice in my head, you have to look pretty for everyone? And when that voice is going on in my head, as I sit in front of you in this little camera looking at myself, I can go, you know what? I'm beautiful just the way I am, is the other voice that's going on inside me. And that gets rid of that voice on the side.
And then what happens? What happens to our outer work when we harness the positive voices and we shut down the inner critic?
I wouldn't call them the positive voices. I would call them supportive
voices.
I really try to stay out of the negative positive dynamic. And I think that's a really important piece that I hone in on tightly. What happens is that we can actually listen to our desires, and without being as attached to them, move towards them. The Tantric philosophy is about embracing desire. It's not about following desire to its end point, to its hedonistic point, but it says that we have desire for a reason. If I have a desire to create, I'll give you an example. One of the participants in the workshop decided after he finished that he wanted to really work with food. And he'd always wanted to work with food, and there was some holdup about it. I don't remember exactly the obstacle. But within a couple years later, he was masterminding a very large micro cottage industry thing that's been a great success. I won't say more details because then I'm an out the person. But what happens when we work on ourselves, when we see that we can be in our power despite our imperfections, is that we tend to step out and we tend to do shit. And that tends to make us feel better because we feel like we're on purpose. We're following we were each brought here to give a particular gift. For some of us, that may be raising a family, caring for a partner and some children. For some of us, that may be creating huge corporations that, like Tesla, that change electricity for the world. It doesn't. No goal or no desire is greater or lesser, but when somebody really gives themselves permission to trust what's in here and to listen what's in here, I often see that they do really cool shit. I don't know how else to put it, but they just do. It's like they light up and they have a gift to give the world and they step into it more freely. Yeah.
And then the last thing you mentioned that I'd love to touch on just really quickly before we close was community. So what's the role of community here?
What's the role of community? It's interesting. We've been encultured to a very individualistic society. I don't think many of us, myself included, I started a community that definitely has many pitfalls. The Fifth Sacred Thing is a great book to read by Starhawk about it. Our humanness gets into communities. And that's, again, why it's so important. Unhealthy people make unhealthy communities. Healthy people make healthy communities. And so the role of community is to reflect each other. You got a friend, and your friend is kind of living a lie. The kindest thing is not to let them live the lie. The kindest thing is to push on them and say, hey, friend, I see you. And that's real community. If you push two things together, they start to rise. A little bit of tension and a little bit of conflict and a little bit of mutual support is all needed. And if people don't feel that they can trust others to hold them, then they feel like they have to hold everything for themselves. And then that's one of the obstacles that will keep them from moving forward. About community, it's a growing process for all of us. I live in Nicaragua, for those that cannot understand that. And here the people live in groups of like 30 and 40 in some houses. And they know how to live in community really well because they all take on their particular roles. But we got told we get to do whatever we want. Now, how do we go back into living in community when we all have our idea of who we are as individuals? I'm not the firstborn daughter who's going to suddenly marry the prince, or the second-born son who's going to join the clergy because that's my role. We have to now find who we are. And that's a gift that I think evolution gave us. But to come back into community rather than a system telling us how we plug in, we're relearning how to plug in together. However, the more confident we are in ourselves as individuals, because we're coming from this individualistic place, the more we can begin to create community because we've lost really sense of how to be interdependent. We're either codependent or independent. Communities are interdependent. How do and we're also, most of our honoring is based on a financial or a material gain. And, what about the really beautiful artistic personality in the room that plays guitar all day but can't quite even cook rice without burning it? How do we honor everybody together? We've to some degree lost sight of all that, and we're relearning. That's what I have to say about communities. We're actually relearning how to do it.
And to tie it back to the NuMundo vision, I would say healthy people create healthy communities, and healthy communities co-create healthy ecosystems and a healthier world. That's sort of the big vision, the long-term goal for us.
And healthy people still don't have to be perfect to be healthy enough to make a difference.
Absolutely.
And I think that's also because I think a lot of our cultures, Western cultures, the get the best grades, go to the best schools. You're only valuable if you're the best. I think we have to also, that's what I'm learning about community, is how to accept other people's imperfections in a way that I can still stay connected. Not always succeeding. That's what I'm learning.
So before we sign off, I want to give you a chance to share the logistics of the next Tantric Way event with our community.
Okay, well, I actually have 3 Tantric Way events coming up this year. One starts November 25th of this year. These workshops run for 3 weeks. They're intensives. One starts November 25th at InanItah in Nicaragua. Then in Lake Atitlan at the Mahadevi Ashram at February 25th. And then in Italy at the Inner Peace Sanctuary, June 9th, one starts.
Great, and we'll share those links in the comments in a minute. Great, Gaia, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. Really appreciate it.
For having me, and thanks for making it easy.
Pleasure, and thank you everyone for hanging out with us. Please share any thoughts you have in the comments. See you soon.
Please, I'm curious to hear. Let me know.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Hello, are we off?